Hey guys, I'm excited to be able to talk to somebody who knows the Chinese social media very well. And this person is none other than Sarah Yam. She has more than 9 years of digital marketing experience in Greater China and is the co-founder of Red Digital Lab, a digital marketing agency based in Hong Kong and the United Kingdom, and also Red Digital Academy, which teaches digital marketing from a East meet West perspective. Sarah Yam is also a blogger and vlogger on travel, lifestyle, and the UK.
Ready to level up your content marketing strategies? This is Level Up Content Play with Rio Liao.
Hello, Sarah, and welcome to the show. And thank you for agreeing to come on to this episode where we can talk a little bit about the difference in terms of social media in the East or specifically in China as compared to the Western world that we know of. So maybe to begin with, Sarah, what have you been busy with recently?
Yeah, thank you for Raul for inviting me for this chat. I've been recently busy with preparing training courses to help companies, entrepreneurs, or marketers to understand how to attract and market to Chinese customers. So I've been busy with that.
Well, for somebody like me who have been using all the so-called Western apps and softwares, um, our understanding is simply that, oh, if we were to go to China, instead of Google, we'll use Baidu. Instead of Instagram, we'll use WeChat and so on, right? Is it really such a straightforward um, changing of the software, but the execution is exactly the same, or is it a totally different animal altogether?
I think there are some similarities and differences. That's why we in our courses we mentioned that it is a East meet West. There are still some similarities. We, as a human, we have the searching behavior. We go search for information, and also when we go on either, no matter it's Instagram or in the West, people go to browse the stuff that they kind of, oh, that sounds interesting, like as if they're not intentionally searching for something, but something kind of pop up in their mind. And for Chinese people, it's still the same animal, even though it's different nationality. When something triggers in your mind, oh, that kind of interesting, right? That kind of psychological, you call it, still applies because it's still a human being.
So what
Just
are some of these differences then?
some differences will be a lot of the will be like languages will be huge factor because we were talking about, and language also fundamentally it's about culture because we construct the language through our own interpretations of the world around us, or people, or the society around us, or people surrounding us. And in the West, it's different because we live in a different society, in a capitalist society, and also individualistic societies. And so there's some linguistic issue. And also in China, there will be social communism society, where it is a more group culture. So you can see that uh, the ads are the interpretations of what we believe and what we want to see. So you can see that in China there are a lot of focusing of more like a group culture rather than individualistic culture. The recent virus that I think one of the brands that make use of the Mao Zedong, red flag, like, oh, we have to combat the virus and all that. You can see that a lot of these commonest kind of visuals or pattern or whatever you can call that brands or company have been making use to draw people attention, relate to people desire, their fear, their really in depth, like relate to what they think, believe, grow up in that sort of specific culture. So I think a lot of the differences is about cultural differences.
And I think the not too long ago, I mean, Dolce and Gabbana's Force Pass in China is also a huge lesson for the West to really to highlight the need for us to understand the cultural differences, right?
Mm.
And even when you are talking about the usage of iconic uh, representations like Mao Zedong and so on, we need to use that with a lot of care as well.
Yeah, of course.
I reckon, right? So yeah, cultural differences is definitely one area that we need to consider. But what about in terms of the apps itself? Are there different approaches to the usage of the apps?
Yeah, so cultural is a more bigger issues, but if you want to touch on more specific apps, the algorithms are different because for Instagram and even Instagram and Facebook has its own algorithm that they run it separately. And when you talk about for China, WeChat has its own algorithms, their own ways to reward you, to penalize you, or you can call it like how you can leverage that channel or platforms, uh, play along with the rules, and to release your own content, to distribute the content, and also maintain a community. So that is a bit the social media aspects for Chinese social media aspects that you when you highlight about the specific channel, or you can also when we're talking about Baidu in comparison to Google, then it will be very much like it has its own sort of firewall system. It kind of prefer those companies who have that China business license and ICP license and all, and have this China server located in China and all that. That's the of course that will be better. So there's also a lot of these things that companies that need to aware of, and they might not aware of before. But it doesn't really mean that when you're Western companies, then there's nothing you can do, or like you always aim at the 100%. Of course, there's the perfect way is that you set up a company in China, have the Chinese business registration license, and all that in an ideal world. But in a not non-ideal world situation, there's still some ways to attract Chinese audiences, but it won't be as perfect as what I said. So, but then it is still feasible. So it's just that there's different stages and there's a pros and cons that if you want to achieve a certain stages, then you need to pay for the price to achieve that kind of stages that you want.
Another area that I'm interested in is since you mentioned that in China it's a lot more collectivism compared to the West, which is more individualistic, right? So when it comes to influencer marketing, right? In the West, is about this one person being such attraction that everybody is crazy over that one person, and therefore marketers can make use of their following, so to speak, to create that kind of messaging and so on in terms of using influencers. But when it comes to China, I know that there are also a lot of huge artists that are very popular and have lots of following. But is there a difference in terms of influencer marketing, so to speak? Is there a situation where in China you can use a lot more so-called micro influencers, perhaps? Yeah, or does the individual person in China has a role to play in
Yeah.
terms of influencing buying decisions?
Yeah, I think it all comes down to the impact you want to create. So there's pros and cons when company want to use a big, huge KOL and also a smaller KOC. It all comes down to different factors. The cost that I think that is the biggest factor when you talk about it. If companies has a less budget size, or they want to do a small test first. They didn't want to throw much money into to create a bigger impact. And I think smaller testing your product or services through a smaller segment is also good. So, and the second will be like the target segment that you want to focus about. Because if you're talking about KOL, then they cover a wide variety of segments. They might have a larger following, come from different provinces, men and women, maybe a wider age, maybe like from 18 to 50 or something like that. But if you're talking about a micro KOLs, you might only just, like you just, for example, a little small town, maybe like a second tier city, the lady who are passionate about makeup cosmetic tips. So maybe she's only able to affect her surroundings. She won't be able to affect a whole national level. So I think you're talking about a really narrow, more specific audiences. But if you're really clear about like that's the audiences you want to try and approach, then I think it was good. If you have a very clear idea of, that's the segment that I want to try on or target, that I think is good ideal way to. I mean, it's good. It's more. It's cost effective. But of course, KOL has a wider audiences, right? So it all comes down. If you're not sure, if you have lots of money, if you have like if you have big brands, LV, Gucci, or Prada, why not? Because everyone knows you anyway. You kind of create a triple or whatever effect out of the investment you put in. So when you put on that investment and that it kind of come back for a return, because already a lot of people already know it. So it really easy way to capitalize the investment you spend. But if you have less people, if people doesn't know you before, even the larger KOL might not willing to talk about it, even not really want to mention it, because for them they don't see any impact. When they don't see any impact, they don't see any. They doesn't see that it kind of resonates to people that they're talking about. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't have that kind of connection, maybe in their world, so to speak, because everyone doesn't know them already. So that's why for smaller brands, I think it's good that you focus on a little bit of a segment to test out their responses, to build relationship through smaller micro influencers. At the end, it's a bit of trust, also trust, relationship building, positive word of mouth. Because for unknown brands, it's people doesn't know you, so there's not much of trust. But if you are big brands, then people already know you. If you're Gucci or Prada, like they pretty much know what they're talking about, really. So I think, of course, that it is easier and it is much. How can you can create a real impact, right? That people know your product already, and your product is good, and then it already all established.
The key takeaways.
Firstly, language and culture is an important consideration when marketing to the China market. China is a huge market, and different parts of China can also have different cultural nuances that we need to understand in order to relate well to the people there. Understanding culture will save us a lot of painful and costly mistakes when marketing into China. Secondly, the digital ecosystem in China is such that they give preferential treatments to companies and brands that set up the business in China itself. And even the content is hosted in servers in China themselves. So if you really are serious about entering into China for marketing purposes, you might want to consider setting up the business itself within China. But of course, as Sarah has mentioned, there are other ways to get around it, but the effects will be not as effective and it will also be costly. And finally, when it comes to influencer marketing, knowing the size of China, it may be a good idea for you to consider using KOCs or key opinion consumers in order to test out your marketing strategy for a particular segment or a niche market.
So thank you very much, Sarah, for joining me today. If people want to find out more on how to learn about Chinese social media or even general digital marketing for the Chinese market, where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, they can search my LinkedIn like Sarah Yam, Sarahyam in LinkedIn and find me. And they can also find the website if there are any questions or need consultancies or executions for Chinese digital marketing, search marketing, or social media websites. They can find us, and we're happy to help.
Cool. And for the Singapore companies, if you want to reach out to Sarah or you have issues reaching out to her, you can also reach out to me and I can connect you with
Yeah,
Sarah,
of course.
especially in the area of training and so on for
Yeah,
this China apps.
yeah, of
In
course.
part 2 of my chat with Sarah, we'll be discussing the use of Chinese social media to engage with the Chinese tourists before they even come to Singapore. So keep a lookout for that episode and remember to subscribe and turn on your notifications so that you will be able to know when the next episode will come out. Okay, so see you. Bye bye.